My name is Adam Simmons of Airview Cinematography, and I was asked to do a review of a product, which is not something I normally do. This would be the very first time that I've bothered to set up to do a proper review of a bit of kit. So pardon me, I'm new at this. The piece of gear is right here. It is the Powrig DTAP to NP style dummy battery. The thing that really interested me about this, because this is not a game-changing piece of gear, but it does have voltage built in. I use V-Lock batteries, and most V-Lock batteries now come with a DTAP out. It would be really weird, I think, now to see one without it. And the whole point of having larger batteries like that on a camera like this is so that you can get away from having to have a battery on every little individual piece of gear. So on a rig like this, it is very handy to have a piece of kit like this, because we've all dealt with these batteries. If you shoot video, you have several of these laying around, and you're gonna have fun charging them. And the price of these really starts to cut into what you could be spending on much better V-Lock batteries or gold batteries. So what I really want to talk about is how I plan on using this. I haven't been able to take this out in the field. I don't know how well this holds up yet. It seems that the build quality is fairly average. And the only thing that jumps out at me that may be an issue is the cable coming out perpendicular to the unit. In some cases, that is ideal. In some cases, it is not. So I think that one is probably just pretty difficult. It's hard to win all situations with that, but I would imagine that it just coming straight out the bottom would be a bit smarter. As these batteries load up that way, it just makes sense that that area is always clear, whereas the side might not be, depending on what the piece of gear is. The reason why I wanted this in particular is for my FS7. I use a Shinobi, a Tomo Shinobi SDI, so that I can check critical focus. Works pretty well. Fairly happy with the unit, but the issue is the batteries. These things, fairly heavy, on a small monitor, kind of ruins the fact that it is a small monitor, whereas using this will allow me to power directly off of my battery. As you can see, part of the issue now is, yet there is another cable. I'm actually not a fan of coiled cables whatsoever, because they almost always add stress on whatever they're connected to. They became a thing that just makes it more difficult to maneuver this around, right? As I move this around, this is now essentially a spring resisting where I'm placing that. And then you know that this will happen. And then of course, those of us that are millennials and older all know what happens to these cables after time. They get limp, they get slacky, and then they're just really saggy. It's kind of a good idea initially, long-term, not so much. I'd rather have a straight cable like I have on everything else, where I can adjust the length simply by wrapping it and using a bongo tie. I think that's how most of us do it. I think that's how most of us like to do it. So that is a bit of a downside. The thing that is a huge upside is that voltage meter. Right now on this rig, there's nothing that tells me how much battery life I have other than my little magic dots. So that is super handy there. We'll put that aside. In my kit, the next thing that I would use the Powrig for is on my focus pulling rig. I have a cable that goes from DTAP that goes to my Shogun Inferno. It works really well. But the only problem with that is if my battery were to run out, as soon as I disconnect this, I have to power down. And this thing isn't the fastest thing to boot up, so that's just a little bit of downtime. Using this dummy battery, power, I can get this in here. Unfortunately, my setup, I think, is less than ideal for swapping things out quickly. But now I have a battery, battery's charged, but I'm going to power off of this unit. This will simply serve as a backup now for when I need to do a hot swap of a battery. Super handy. I kind of feel like I'm a Swedish chef. Is this a chef show? When I'm entertaining friends, I like to make souffle. So here we have it. The readout is fairly dim, which I think when you first look at it, that might not make sense as to why that would be that way. The more I think about it, the more I actually like it. It's not a bright display that might mess up your lighting situation in a dim lighting setup. And even right now, here in the studio, 5-point lighting set up, I can still read that even though it's pretty dim. I'm at 8.22 volts. I am now running. I'm running off of a big battery, which is 8.2 volts, as that says. So there are two, I think, really important uses for this adapter. Now, after I've had a chance to use this on some shoots, which I will be using it here pretty shortly, I'll come back and just do a follow-up. It might even just be in the comments, so make sure that you scroll down, check it out, and if anybody else has used this or something similar, feel free to comment. Thanks.